Go there. Ha. Now you can see me if you're on the YouTube and Facebook channels. The locker room is, I think, a very unique situation. Erik Karlsson seemed to hint at it last year. We'll get to Erik Karlsson, too. Don't worry. We will certainly get to Erik Karlsson and the Penguins trade rumors and everything that's going on there. But first, I want to kind of go over the Penguins locker room because you have a very tight-knit core. Crosby, Malkin, Letang. I would probably put Brian Rust in that group as he's earned his way into it with a couple of Stanley Cup rings as well. So you've got that core. Then you've kind of got the wild card, the free atom, the loose atom, Erik Karlsson, who kind of, he's his own guy. There's no question that there's a drummer playing just for Erik Karlsson. He marches to that one and none other. You can certainly hit at Karlsson for some lackadaisical play this season, for a lack of intensity, and quite frankly, a lack of production as well. All of those things are completely valid. I'm told it's not as bad as you might think, but it's still bad. The former Swedish national coach hitting at him on Wednesday as well, saying he shouldn't be on the Swedish national team because his play is too erratic for a short tournament. That was pretty big. I don't think you understand. That was big, that coming out. But we'll get to Karlsson in just a few moments. And then after the core, Erik Karlsson, then you kind of have some guys on the outside of that. I don't think this is as tight-knit as it was a couple of years ago, just because of all the new faces. But let's be brutally honest here. A lot of the new faces, do you really expect them to be around very long? Guys on one-year contracts, okay, you accept them in and you hope they can help you. But when guys are on one-year contracts and you're a little bit dubious if they're going to help you, or they're fighting for their NHL lives, or they're not that productive, well, it's tough to integrate, isn't it? I think that's just natural human nature. So you don't have this locker room that is entirely in sync. I didn't say friction. I didn't say problems. I'm just saying it's maybe a little bit looser around the edges or around the core, just because the core is so entrenched with each other. That's a little bit of a problem. And if you want my brutally honest opinion here, I think the Penguins are broken. I don't know how they fix this. I don't know how they don't just absolutely smack down Detroit on Wednesday, or at least attempt to. That was quite incredible. As the game went on, after Brian Rust scored that second period goal, then everybody kind of got a little bit of a confidence boost, and the Penguins went at Detroit. But they only scored 2 goals. Think about that. And I'm going to kind of maybe interject part of the Dubis conversation here, the Kyle Dubas part. For all of the analytics that say, the Penguins should score this many goals, the Penguins should do this, the one thing that detracts from all of those numbers is age. The older these players get, the more difficult it is to score. The more scoring chances are required. That's just an immutable fact of life. As the team gets older, it has become more difficult to score. And it just tells you how great Crosby and Malkin are, that they are still putting up the production that they are able to put up, despite not being as effective as they were 5 years ago. Dubas I don't think, took this into account. I also think Dubas is getting dangerously close to to breaking the promise that the organization from ownership down made to Crosby that they were going to fix this quickly and they were going to be competitive. I don't think they're able to do that. So let's talk about the Penguins trade rumors. That'll be the next brick here, because now it is all over the media. I bit my tongue. I was told a few days ago, look out. Everybody's available. Now, to me, I assumed that, and I think you would have assumed that too. But, it's begun to trickle out, and then in 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman dropped it last night, and he put Drew O'Connor on the trade list. He put Chris Letang as a possible one, but really downplayed everyone's ability to acquire him because of the health issues, because of of the play. There's no question that Chris Letang obviously is in great physical shape and is just an absolute warrior. I guess the question becomes, is he healthy? Is he able to reach his peak performance now? Because he's got 3 years left. Full no movement clause, 35-plus contract. Any team taking him on is potentially taking on a boat anchor. As good as he can be, it could also really cost a team. But now all of that's public. It's all out in the open now. And I guarantee on Thursday, as the players go to Columbus, they're hearing about it. A few of them are probably talking about it. Maybe a lot of them are probably talking about it. This further distracts, it further pulls apart the locker room. That's why I went with locker room number 1. Because now you start looking, am I the guy that goes? Is he the guy that goes? Is my buddy the guy that goes? Are they actually going to trade Chris Letang? Are they going to dismantle us? That weighs heavily. I don't care what players will say tomorrow when we have to ask the obligatory questions, and I don't know if I will or not. I mean, I'll be in the locker room Friday morning there in Columbus, but I genuinely don't know if I want to ask that question because, hang on one quick second. There, I've had that cough building for a while. I don't know if I'm going to ask the question because I know the answer. No, you have to block it out. We're professionals here. We have to win games. We have to change things, so on and so forth. I could write out the cue cards for them to read at this point. But I also know that they're lying or they're deluding themselves in that moment. I know in the afternoon, in those quiet times when they're in their room or if the boys are together playing cards, I know they're thinking about it. Any player that's honest will admit it after the fact and say, yeah, it began to wear on me. It just does. I mean, imagine if you worked for a company. Let's say you worked for U.S. Steel and this potential Nippon merger would cost you your job. Or maybe this merger might give you a big, better job. Either way, you're thinking about it. You're not going into work every day, keeping your head down, saying, just take it one day at a time, guys and gals. Just take it one day at a time. No, you're thinking about this stuff. You're human. So Dubas has now opened the can of worms. Whether or not he has a plan to get the worms back in the can is an entirely different matter. The Lars Eller trade was subpar. Pierre Maguire on his podcast yesterday and my buddy Jimmy Murphy, who used to do Boston hockey now, sent it to me this morning and said, take a listen to this. And Pierre bluntly said that he thought the Penguins, Dubas, were in panic mode. I kind of get it because none of this was supposed to happen. None of this. This was supposed to be the resurrection. They were supposed to get some production from Anthony Beauvillier. They were supposed to get something from Kevin Hayes. And Matt Grisick was supposed to be an upgrade on P.O. Joseph. And Ryan Graves was supposed to take a step forward. And Tristan Jarry was going to be healthy. And he worked hard this summer. They're going to have a number 1 and a number 2 with Nedeljkovic. And things were going to be better. They've got 6 wins in 18 games. Things are not better. So when you trade a guy who is one of your stalwarts for a draft pick 3 years in the future and a third rounder to boot, so the team subtracted without getting commensurate help, or at least the chance to get commensurate help even next year. They punted it way down into the future. Players see that as well. Do I go into Dubas' history? Kind of, listen, he's struggled here to start his Penguins tenure. Absolutely, he has struggled. You go with 5 years for Tristan Jarry and 6 years on Ryan Graves. Those are pretty stiff contracts. In full disclosure, I wrote that it was pretty much Brian Dumoulin, Ryan Graves, or bust on July 1st, 2023. Actually, I wrote that a couple days prior, but, in advance of the free agency period, I said, okay, it's Dumoulin, Graves, or bust. Looking back, well, would you rather have Brian Dumoulin on a 2-year, $8 million contract or Ryan Graves on a 6-year deal? That's a legitimate question. And that was the choice in front of them. Tristan Jarry at 5 years, we've talked about, well, there was no other options. It was Jonas Korpisalo or Tristan Jarry. I tend to wonder if 5 years was entirely necessary. Korpisalo only got 4 in Ottawa. The Erik Karlsson trade certainly isn't working out very well for the Penguins. What would they be with Jeff Petrie and Mikael Granlund? I shudder to think. But would they be any worse? No, and they probably could move one of those two into trade for less than a first and second round draft pick. What else? This summer, Kevin Hayes and Cody Glass and Anthony Beauvillier. All fine human beings. Not necessarily the help that was to fortify the Penguins lineup, is it? I've been lukewarm to, mildly positive on some of these, but I also didn't spend hours in the film room really breaking down their game. And there are some things I feel like the Penguins should have seen. This is where we are. This is Kyle Dubas and the situation. He was left a rotten bag of lemons. No question about that. His attempts to make lemonade haven't exactly made anything better, however. And so when Pierre Maguire says he's panicking, I can kind of see where Pierre's coming from on that. Can you? I think you can. Now let's talk about Mike Sullivan. I know all of your knee-jerk reactions. I am going to tell you that with about 5 minutes elapsed in the second period, I began to believe that Mike Sullivan's Penguins tenure was over. If the Penguins lose to Detroit 4 or 5-0, if Detroit gets that third goal and the Penguins crumble, it would be a matter of days for Sullivan. I don't know how a team could recover from a beatdown and then a laydown with any sort of consistency at the top. You would have to make a change. I'll go that far with you. That's why I had even tweeted that second goal. I forgot to use all these little cool pictures here I did for the video. For those of you on the YouTube side. Anywho, I've just been kind of, I zone into radio. I get into radio mode where I'm just kind of looking here at my keyboard. I forget about the camera and I'm in the headphones and I just, I miss that part of my career. I digress. Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan is not out of the woods because the Penguins have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and Erik Karlsson for now. They have to be competitive. And if the team, now go back through all the points that I've kind of mentioned now, the locker room and its unique construction. Looking around at all the players as the trade rumors proliferate. And by the way, according to Elliot Friedman, the trade ask on the part of the Penguins is first a young NHL player. I mean, except for Marcus Pettersson, good luck. Maybe in an Erik Karlsson trade, they might get a young NHL player, but Pettersson is really their only shot there. I don't think Drew O'Connor is going to pull a commensurate replacement. Otherwise, why would a team trade that player to get O'Connor? The second thing they want is an already drafted prospect. They want some development. You know, they want to see something on tape, either, you know, after the draft, maybe in the AHL for half a season or whatnot, wherever, you know, that player has been. Probably just, you know, a draft pick in the last couple of years. Or third, a draft pick. Picks, plural. That's what they want. So if that is gospel, if that is letter of the law true, then the Penguins really can't expect any help on the way. That also kind of dings a locker room. You've seen it when a team doesn't get help at the trade deadline in all sports, really. No, I shouldn't say all. Let's call it baseball, hockey, basketball, where the trade deadlines are really a big deal. A team that feels like it's just a piece away and doesn't get that piece can be really disappointed and struggle more than they had been. We've seen it. How many times? Well, we've seen it a lot with the Pirates, but even those players have now given up on that ship. I said ship. I promise. Even the players have given up on that ship. We've seen it with the Penguins. I remember a couple of times before Generation Next kicked in, the Lang, Straka, Kovalev, Mario days, when they just didn't have the money for that extra piece. And Craig Patrick would try. Oh, would Craig Patrick try? That guy threw more mud on the wall than anybody. And the team would kind of just get deflated. And they would fade in the final weeks because they knew they just weren't quite good enough. If the Penguins start making trades, and you can just say it, rebuild. If the rebuild begins, can you imagine how disheartened the core is going to be? I mean, part of it is on them. Part of this is on them for not producing to X level, for not somehow getting the team to completely go through walls. But even, you know what? Even when the Penguins are willing to go through walls on some nights, they don't have a lot of talent to get through the wall. Kind of back to Dubas. I do place, proportionally speaking, I put more of this on Dubas than I do Mike Sullivan. I do think at some point the coach is going to be in deep trouble. And if the Penguins don't turn it around, if they continue losing or OTL points and you know, they win one of every 3 games, unless Dubas would come out and publicly say, okay, we're in the tank. That would be the only way to save Mike Sullivan. That or the team just absolutely playing bonkers, just really hard every night. Those are the 2 ways you save the coach. Otherwise, I do think he's on the clock. I think Sullivan is on the clock. I also think Sullivan has done a really good job with what he has to work with this team. I just do. The line changes last night. He finally tried Drew O'Connor at center, and I thought the results were positive. He didn't stick with it, which I get it. He likes O'Connor on the wing, and it's tough to pull yourself away. I suspect David Quinn, who put O'Connor at center in the World Championships back in May and had really good results, is saying, Mike, do it. Do it. And I suspect we will see it. What have they got to lose at this point? Stack your top line, Malkin, Crosby, Raquel. Make your second line Bunting, O'Connor, and Rust. And that's not a bad top six if O'Connor is the type of center I think he is. I think he's a different player. His head is up. He's looking for those plays. He's back, but he's charging forward. It gave him a bit of a boost. And as I said in the postgame Wednesday night, little birdies have told us, through the course of time that, O'Connor does like to play center. So I think there's where you stand. That's probably as much as I can lay out for you, as much context, as much information as I can download for you. The conclusions, hopefully you take all of that and make a pie. You don't pick and choose little this, ignore that sort of things. They are in trouble. I feel like they're broken. I feel like they're in desperate need of something good to happen. But I don't think that something good is going to come from Kyle Dubas, who is now looking more like the executioner rather than a builder. And it is worth noting that, there are no plans to trade Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby. You have to wonder if they look around. I mean, they get to play together. Okay, depending on how bad this gets, and I've written this probably half a dozen times, eventually one of them is going to say to the other, why are we doing this? Why are we here? And once that seed is really planted, I wonder if it will grow. All right, a couple quick notes from Wednesday night's game. I thought Sam Poulin got stronger as the game went on. I didn't make a big deal of it in the report card only because they were much bigger fish to fry. Poulin got stronger. He was a step behind in the first period. Physically, he's bigger, he's heavier. He's like 227 pounds now. He's a beast. And I think if he gets some confidence, gets some playing time, that I think he's got a chance to break through. You're not going to see him he's not a top six guy, so don't put those expectations on him. But he, with some continued work and progression, maybe he does move into a third line role, third line center, third line winger. Entirely possible. The Penguins called up Vasily Ponomarev, Pony, as they will call him. They called up Ponomarev on Thursday, along with Matt Nieto. They could have kept Nieto down a little longer, several more days, but I guess they called him up now, figured no time like the present. Although Puckpedia still lists him as on LTIR. Not quite sure how that works. I'll let the bean counters and I'll let everybody else figure that out, and I'll just tell you when it happens, when they activate him. Ponomarev is... I'm going to tell you this about Ponomarev. Temper your expectations. Understand what kind of player he is. This is not a guy who's going to be a top six guy. I don't think he's a third liner. I think he's going to be a really good fourth liner. He's an aggressive, intense kind of guy who gets on the puck, on the walls, and he can skate like the wind. I haven't seen much in the way of hands from him. Not in camp, not prospect tournament, not in the beginning stages of training camp. I just haven't seen hands. I've seen a guy who can skate through a brick wall straight ahead. Go get the puck, like Danny from The Replacements. Give me the ball. I think he's that guy. I don't, and I caution you not to put too many expectations. And for the love of God, I'll end the podcast on this note. By the way, like and subscribe. Make sure you sign up for the downloads. I'll end the podcast on this note. For the love of God, do not tweet, email, DM, or say to me, well, you got to play them. See what they can do. I promise you, the organization has some idea of what they can do and their expectations. Just because we don't know, because we haven't seen them every day, doesn't mean the organization hasn't. Or at least they sure as heck should have. All right, that is the end of episode 5. No pucks given. I almost got to 30 minutes. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hey, I will happily take some constructive criticism as we get this podcast off the ground. So tell me what you'd like more or less of, how we can round some of the hard edges. And, I'm happy to have that conversation. Because coming from radio, I would just sit down. We had a clock. And by a clock, I mean, okay, you talk for 10 minutes here, you take a commercial break, you talk for 4 minutes here, you throw it to the news, you come back, you've got a 3-minute segment, make sure you have a phone call, take phone calls here for these 7 minutes, and you're back to the top of the hour. And this was just, 4 hours just like that. Podcasting, obviously, a lot more free form, and I can be long-winded as I was in that long sign-off. Okay, that's it. Good night. Goodbye. I will see you in Columbus on Friday. Please, like I said, like, share, sign up for the downloads. Have fun.